That's what you say. It
I
all
wasn't
depends
going to
what
go
you want.
into it fully in detail because he does have a couple things where we've since added, like the QA stuff, and there's a couple things that are not.
He was going on about that. Well, anyway, he
Yeah,
got all
and
done.
that,
And when it got done, he
I was
says,
going to hit the highlights
"It's nice
or
to meet you.
something
My name is
or if
Steve
we need to,
Yanko."
but
Oh, God.
it'll
Oh,
be read.
God,
It'll be
I
in the record
didn't
too
realize that's
to
who it
read.
was. And I didn't know he worked for Down East.
He does. Been
If
working
you
down
want to
East
have
forever.
something prepared, if you want to kick it
I
off,
know him from photography. And
Okay.
Addie, his mother, used to go to church with us.
Yeah.
You would all please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councillor Kane? Here. Councillor Fellows?
Here.
Councillor Keller? Here. Councillor LaRochelle?
Here.
Councillor Lunt?
Here.
Councillor Moore? Councillor Robichaud?
Here.
First item is a workshop for EMS options for Lisbon.
Okay. Want to welcome everybody for the that's here for the workshop. Some of the working rules that we have per our charter for the workshops. I just want to go over a couple of them. Workshop meetings are focused on the council's formulation of policy based on general topic discussions of current issues or project-oriented. They may be also held for purpose of disseminating information for council enlightenment and evaluation or for the discussion or refinement of future agenda items. No binding vote shall be taken on any matter under discussion, but a non-binding vote on any matter under discussion may be taken. Citizens are welcome to attend workshops. However, citizens will not normally participate in workshop discussion unless invited to do so by the town manager or town council. Prior to the conclusion of the workshop, if time permits, the chair may allow questions from the public. Comments by the public shall be limited to no longer than 2 minutes per person, and no debate or discussion of collateral issues shall be permitted. Comments shall be limited to the expression of opinions, questions, or concerns pertaining to agenda items. We'll open with a statement from our town manager.
Okay, sorry, this mic is a little. So I'm just going to go over the agenda workshop. We kind of have a loose one prepared to kind of keep us on task. We'll start with an intro and a workshop objective. For members of the public and folks who haven't been following the past couple months in this discussion, we'll do a quick overview of our current structure and the discussions up to this point. We'll then review Lisbon Emergency's proposal, and I have Stephen Langsdorff here, town attorney for the town of Lisbon, to talk about the legal considerations, provide insights pertinent to the discussion, and for council to ask questions. And then following those discussions with council, we'll reserve time for public comment. We'll limit that public comment to subject matter experts, staff from Lisbon Emergency, and elected officials from our partner towns. If additional time remains, the chair or the council can permit the general public. If we don't have enough time, we have our regular meeting following the workshop and the regular public comment section during that part of the meeting for general public. Following that, we'll conclude and council determine their next steps for the outcomes of the workshop. That'll inform their actions, and it'll be retained as a regular agenda item at the regular meeting. So if you want to take action, we have a little placeholder for you to take action. So I will kick it off by going over it. So we're here to explore strategic options for our EMS services. We're considering an interlocal agreement that was outlined in your agenda packets. The bylaws are provided as a starting point. We aim to discuss various structures, quasi-municipal, our current setup. And initially we were discussing a town-operated model. Just from a staff perspective, due to the cost implications and the projections I provided and the operational challenges in getting something like that spun up, I don't recommend that structure at this time. I'd like to welcome, again, Stephen, Council, Lisbon Emergency, and folks from our partner towns. And as Harry said, any decisions made in the workshop are non-binding. And there's folks who know the history better than I do here, so I'm just going to kind of recap it a little bit. For folks that don't know, the town contracts with Lisbon Emergency, which is a 501c3 membership organization and has for decades. In 2017, I believe, it necessitated additional financial support from the partner towns. We recently issued an RFP in 2023, which led to the continuation of that partnership with a focus on exploring this regionalization. I will now set it up for Stephen to talk a little bit about the proposal that we received and his suggestions on that structure and any questions or discussion the council wants to have regarding that proposal or anything else.
Very good.
Thank you, Glenn, and happy to be with you this evening by Zoom. So I've been reviewing the information that Glenn provided, and also Kristen has been talking to Glenn about this for a while, and just wanted to give you some general thoughts about this process of how to address a type of more regional conversion with respect to the emergency medical services. So basically, I think there are two specific options, well, several specific options, one of which would be incorporating this into a municipal department, which has a lot of complications to it, and also is not the easiest structure for dealing with other municipalities. There is the possibility of extending the agreement with your current provider, but I think that the option that we're looking at most closely is what's called an interlocal agreement, basically to form a corporation to provide these types of services. So I have been provided with what we would call a descriptive outline of the government bylaws and operational structure for a proposed organization, and I've gone through that. It's a good start. I think it's a document that's going to need some refining, and there are really two different things that look to me like are kind of being married up into one document, because you need to have an interlocal agreement between the towns, and then you need to have bylaws of the corporation itself once you enter into the interlocal agreement, right? So this looks a little bit like we're trying to kind of bite off both things in one document in my review of this. So I would be proposing a somewhat, it would have to be negotiated, but a document that isn't quite as detailed as this, that would be the interlocal agreement that the towns would enter into who want to proceed with this type of arrangement, and then work on these bylaws in terms of once they're set up, you know, as a corporation. I didn't see anything that was improper or explicitly, but it's very extremely detailed in terms of things like rights of first refusal for existing employees and severance and things that maybe to me seem more like it would be things that would be looked at by a board of directors or a new, you know, management of an organization. But in effect, what you do is, and I'll go through, there's a statute which is called Interlocal Cooperation Joint Exercise of Powers, and this allows any government entities, two or more government entities, to enter into joint or cooperative action that whatever is approved has to be approved by the legislative body of each municipality, whether that be a council or whether that be by town meeting. But the agreement itself has some basic requirements that have to go into it, which include the duration of it, the precise type of legal organization, the purpose, the manner of financing, how the agreement would be terminated, and any other, you know, matters. It also would include requirement for an administrator or a joint board, and it must address how property would be held and disposed of, acquired, and so forth. So there's a kind of a general outline for an agreement that we would work, hasn't been drafted yet, that would be worked on, that would be set up in such a way that additional municipalities could join, obviously depending on, I saw some language about 20 miles from base, but whatever the appropriate distance is in terms of which municipalities and so forth might be interested in participating. I think there are a number of different thoughts that would have to go into all this. This particular agreement has an assumption as to where, the base operations would be. I understand there's at least a thought about building a new public safety building. So if it was dedicated to other uses, which I would think it would be, other than just emergency medical services, then likely the corporation would end up having a lease, assuming that it's built in Lisbon. You'd have sort of standard lease arrangement, but you'd have a number of different factors that I think that would be considerations for municipalities when they're going into this in terms of really sort of the initial formation of the corporation in terms of its assets. A nonprofit can simply basically, if it goes out of existence, can just pass on its assets. But if any of the municipalities participate in providing assets, then there would have to be some sort of formula for how that would be worked out and reimbursed by anyone else who joined. Control is very much important in terms of how the board of directors is established. Generally, I would think that this would be something that would be a representation in voting weighted by population. Obviously, that gives kind of a heads up, an advantage to the largest organization involved, which presumably be Lisbon. And so that's something that obviously has to be negotiated. There would be annual budget approvals that each of the towns would have to participate in for any potential deficits over operating costs. I would be thinking about what sanctions there were for withdrawals. If you probably would have a minimum amount of time. I saw 10 years in this draft document, or whatever that might be, and if there was early withdrawal, how would that work out? Borrowing is definitely a consideration. Well, this corporation, you can't delegate essential municipal functions to a corporation like this. You can't give them the power, of taxation and bonding and so forth. So it's really something that whatever type of borrowing arrangements would need to be made would be something that would again have to be something that would be approved by the municipalities, and they would then, in terms if you needed to bond, they have to lend their full faith and credit, or there could be other types of lending arrangements. But really, it's very much like any other corporation, whether a nonprofit corporation, that would have a chief executive officer, employees, and a board of directors, and they would be the ones who would, set the policies and run the organization and deal with things like, what you have to charge for different types of services, what equipment do you need, all the things that you expect to go along with an organization like this. There is the possibility, like there is for your water district, a private and special law to set up its own sort of quasi-municipal entity that does have that bonding and independent powers and so forth. I don't particularly see any need to do that at this time. I think the interlocal agreement really covers all the things that you would want to do. Has normal governmental immunities and so forth. So that's kind of, these are my sort of over, 30,000 foot, overview of the situation. It will take obviously a bit of work to put together an agreement that everybody would, sign off on, and there's an approval process, so it takes some negotiating. I would definitely want to spend some time probably making this bylaws a little bit less specific, but more in terms of talking about what the powers are of the board of directors, the overall purpose and direction that we were talking about. So this is basically what I've been thinking about as I've been knowing about this project for the last couple of days. and I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody.
Any questions? Vern?
As of right now, I don't.
Anybody? We don't have any from the board. I'm going to ask the audience. Anybody in the audience have any questions?
So far as borrowing,
Could you step up, sir, and state your name and where you're from?
Mark Bernier, Town of Bowden. So far as borrowing, would there be an advantage to being a quasi-municipal organization versus just an interlocal agency?
I don't think so. It's an issue we have to drill down into a little bit more, because I think by pooling your, basically, it'd be in effect a bond that would be pledged by the full faith and credit of the municipalities, so I don't believe that there would be any significant advantage of that. We've been tossing that around, so I think that's a concept that we need to drill down into a little bit more deeply, but my sense is that there wouldn't be any significant difference, other than you might lose a little bit of control in a sense, because then that entity becomes its own, entity that can make its own bonding decisions and so forth. And so the towns don't have the same degree of control and approval that they might have if it becomes its own quasi-municipal corporation through a private and special law. But again, I don't have haven't got a final answer really on that.
Okay. The other question, I think, Amy, you had brought up, if it were a quasi...
Sir, I'm so sorry. Can you speak into the microphone for our
Yep.
folks at home?
If it were a quasi-municipal agency, there would be, it would be a little more advantageous so far as like grants and so forth. Is that that was kind of the direction I was going, not necessarily borrowing, but actually going for grants and actually being able to...
I wouldn't think so, where it's established under an interlocal agreement specifically between municipalities. It's not a non-profit corporation in the standard sense that you're just sort of supplying, the resources to from different municipalities. I mean, it's in effect it's actually owned, so to speak. There's not really ownership of the nonprofit, but because there are no shareholders, but it would be something that would be created specifically by the municipalities as an interlocal agreement under state law. So it's not obvious to me that there'd be any disadvantage with respect, to grant funding either.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Courts.
John Courts, Deputy Chief Lisbon Emergency.
Mr. Courts, could you please use one of the microphones? Either one is fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. John Courts, Lisbon Emergency, Deputy Chief. We had our lawyer look into this, and one of the things that he was suggesting, I don't know if this is applicable or not, but merging the two entities, does that make sense as far as a smooth transition? One of the things that we're concerned about is any new entity cannot bill Medicare for 6 months. So, when we create this new entity, there's a lot on our end as far as our ability to stay operational and keep income coming in for the future for the new entity.
I think we would figure out a way, absolutely, to work with that, whether we continue the existence of the original corporation for the period of time that would be necessary to get through that 6 months, and then it becomes a successor entity. But I understand the concern you're raising, and I'm sure that we can deal with that appropriately.
There's no other questions. We're good.
So that covers the proposal that was given to the council and some of the potential structures. Is there any council discussion not related to that before we move on to I have some stuff to read into the record from members of the public that sent in comments and a couple other things, but before we do that, I'd ask if you guys have any other things you want to talk about.
I think the more information we put forward before we have discussion would be great.
Okay. So, so I'm not going to go into the full report. You all received it. Stakeholders received it. Lisa will add it to the record after the meeting, so it'll be in the minutes. But we have Fire Chief of Yarmouth, who's a resident of Lisbon, who basically, the long and short of his comments and proposal is kind of what we kind of arrived at this morning when staff was discussing it, is that there's definitely more time that we need to take to either hammer out the interlocal agreement, but to basically, with the long-range planning of the public safety facility and how that integrates into the future of our fire service. I know Chief Robitaille recommended 3 years as a timeline horizon for how he sees this being implemented, and me and the town manager of Bodenham weren't too far off. We think we need to at least ask council to authorize us to extend the current contract for 2 years, have some time to work on the details if a quasi-municipal is in fact the direction the council wants to go, time to negotiate that and work that out, and then at least a year to implement. I know the partner towns also have town meetings at different times of the year, so they're getting ready for their budget, and I mean, even if we were all in agreement on everything today, it would still take time to spin that up. So at minimum, we would at least ask council to authorize us to have the ability to extend the current contract 2 years.
I got a question. Go ahead. Yeah, I don't disagree with extensions. The extension, if we do that for 2 years, what type of agreement would we have with Lisbon as far as what percentage per year increase?
So I didn't want to get too into operations in the workshop because we were really talking about structure and getting direction from the council and how we want to proceed with the entity itself, or if they wanted to proceed at all. But my understanding, just from having conversations with John, is whatever we ask for and whatever we want to pay for, we can have whatever we like as far as staffing goes. So I mean, we can ask for status quo in the budget, and we have some projections on that for the upcoming year. And I know these are loose projections, but we are currently, I believe this year we're paying $334,626.96, and then the projected annual cost to keep staffing at the current level with the current funding formula is $443,105 for the towns of Bowden and Bodenham, $141,886, and if we were to ramp up staffing, and that I believe is to staff full-time, 8 full-timers would be $739,278, and with 4 full-timers, 24/7 coverage at $661,899. And we're starting to get ready for our budget too, so we'll be going into workshops in March. So really from this workshop and in the regular meeting, if we can just get consensus on a direction, and then we can hammer out the operational stuff before the December meeting, so those folks can prepare their budgets. And either way, we won't have a new entity this year, so we should plan for existing structure at least for the upcoming budget.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Over the last couple months, there's been a group meeting that met twice that actually myself, Ray, Georgine actually sat in on with our management staff and some of our chiefs, and just kind of going over the idea of the quasi-municipal, what that looked like. And I got to say, it was very educational, right? So, I mean, the idea of learning what it takes to actually financially put this together, and the idea that figure keeps hitting me in the head where the base figure of $1 million to actually have an active ambulance in a community that's actually ready to serve and ready to go, and which seems like a lot of money, but it's really not when you break it down to what actually needs to be done. Through those meetings, I just want to just touch on a couple of things. One is, I think the most important thing that everybody's looking at is actually having the best quality service available, right? So if something happens, there's someone there, well-equipped with the right personnel, and I think that was really important. That was kind of the focus of the whole thing, was how do we get to that point? And secondly is the idea of trying to avoid some of the stuff we've had in years past, right, where we actually year to year try to figure out financially where we're at. Is it feasible? Do we look elsewhere? Do we go out to bid? And, you know, a lot of those discussions were had on how that actually doesn't help the service and doesn't help the town, and for long-term structurally being stable. Looked at a lot of different things, right? We talked about different things for the meetings, and we had a lot of different people speak, which actually was really good, so we got a good handle on it. One of the things that we did understand, at least just talking to Ray and so Jane after, was you know, Lisbon Emergency wants to become a stable organization, right? Where you actually have possibly some lifelong career people that actually can say that's a full-time job, not just not the place to hang their hat when they're not doing something else, you know, which I think is really important. Through those meetings, I think we realized that, and I've talked to John one night there, and, you know, the simplest path the council has seen is the idea of just, if it became under the umbrella of the town, we could handle it somewhat much like another department, like we would our police or fire, which, you know, the council has always kind of supported that avenue, but that's not a quick and easy process either, because financially, you know, that would take to bring in the structure underneath the town is something that couldn't happen quick enough for all of us to actually meet the criteria of our budget coming up. The idea of quasi-municipal, I mean, I think it's neat. I think there's a lot of moving parts. Some of it, it's hard for me to grasp a little bit how it works. If we are able to actually extend the contract, you know, to say a year contract, so we have more time to work on it. Myself, I would like to see this set up very much like it would be with a quasi-municipal, right? So it's actually a larger entity, so we would know kind of a dry run, right? See how it works out, see if everybody can actually be happy. I would like to actually start looking at, you know, with the budget you prepare, some of that, you know, stability you're looking in. I mean, the idea of whether, I'm not sure exactly the exact number of full-time people you need. There was a lot of different ratios there, and I mean, I know talking to our police chief, he's happy with been pretty satisfied with the calls we've been having and the amount of service we've been having. So, you know, definitely maintaining what we have, and if there's a level area to improve that financially is doable with all the communities, I think that would be a great step. I think the idea of extending the contract isn't difficult. I mean, if we give as a council vote just to give the direction to our management team to actually do that, I think that could be worked out even beyond what our councilors are. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think we all agree that, number one, we just need good service, right? We want, you know, something happened to one of our loved ones, we want someone to be there, not just there, but trained and ready to go and be able to service everything we need to be. So, you know, I'm definitely in favor of the idea of just keeping things moving forward, but to do it, with a contract, whether it's a year extension, just so we can actually get the financial numbers, so we can go to, you know, for our budget season and other communities go to their town meetings and try to keep it moving forward, because we definitely don't want to stall there. You know, I think there's a lot of things that we discuss those nights and stuff, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think we just want to make sure everybody feels good about we're trying to actually get the best services possible and support the people that have been supporting us, and how we go about it. I think there's a lot of different opinions, but at the end of the day, I'd like to see it kind of play out for next year and see how that works out. That's my two cents worth.
I'll add another penny or so. I think the approach of a quasi-municipal organization can work probably better than coming inside the town. This is a very expensive proposition for the budget, no matter what town you're talking about. And I think if the services gradually increase to have more full-time or full-time people involved, it's going to be even more expensive. So I think that extending the current contract with some rights in it to increase cost, or maybe even increase staffing in the second year or third year, might be the way to go. And even if we did something in town with a public safety building, as it was just mentioned, if the quasi organization exists, then it could lease if it's going to be in the same location. So I think that might be the right approach to get us started, rather than jumping off and saying, okay, we want this group to be part of the town right now.
Thank you. I'm interested in, and I know that there was some grant funding that you had mentioned. Do we know where the state is as far as the monies for the joint?
I was going to say, I'm not as in the loop as I was when we were talking about this over the summer, because Sam Hurley is it public that he's left? It now is, so, because I just said it. But but I'll invite John or Amy up to speak to that, because they'll probably know a little bit more. The last number I remember getting kicked around was the state had 31 million. They were deciding how to allocate it,
Right.
and then it got flipped to give a Band-Aid to existing services, et cetera.
Was that an LD? Is that something that's been passed, or is it still being?
It's been passed, it's funded, and they're not giving us the money.
Okay.
Yep. The original intent was for us to be an emergency bill, and it was $81 million, and for it to all go to the services. We're dealing with the state. They split it up, so 31 million was going to go as emergency funds to the state. It was supposed to have been released, and we were supposed to have, we have the, what it's supposed to be for the stipulations that we can get this money. We can get this money. Lisbon Emergency is qualified. There's also non-transporting funds that Lisbon Fire, Bowden Rescue, and Bowdenham Rescue will also be able to get. We don't know how much money that's going to be under this initial 31 million. The people that, there's a lot of people upset that the whole thing didn't get released, and honestly, we were supposed to be able to apply for this 10/26. Well, we all know what happened 10/25. So they got postponed for that, and then beginning of November is this big EMS thing at the Samoset. So they're saying, well, we need another couple weeks, and here we are the week before, a couple days before Thanksgiving. We still do not have the application to apply for it. The remaining $50 million, they have not stated how that's going to be released yet. There is a push to just release it to all the services so we can get our money and do something with it. But they have not stated how that's going to happen. The other way it may go is, in the original intent of splitting it, was the 51 million was to be decided by Maine EMS board for regionalization, things like what we're planning on doing.
Right.
So either way, we'd be able to apply for it, because even if it doesn't happen this year, that's what we're working on. We're adding Bowdenham in. We'd still be able to apply for it. In our budget, that budget is something we threw together. We didn't have a lot of numbers that we need to put that real budget together, but we should be close. And we didn't include any of that money in this. So we have more money coming. We have no idea how much.
So is the application process even open yet, or
No.
they haven't even opened it yet?
I've sent email after email to everybody saying, where's this application? And next week I'll CC every one of you, because I'm going to send a nice email to Maine EMS and the Blue Ribbon Commission. There's a lot of people upset. I mean, the legislature's intent was for this money to help emergency services. There's some services, services even like us that are doing well, and there's not that many of them, need that money for operations and continue what we plan to do.
Right.
There's services out in Washington County that are about 2 seconds from failing. They desperately need this money, and it's being held up by the state.
And during our meetings, they were talking like it was actually pretty readily available fairly soon. I mean, if that's the same funding we were talking about, two different pools of money for two different parts of the, organization. But, typical, right?
I think
Wheels of-
right before we started these discussions, I was told 60 to 90 days for the community self-whatever reliance grant, so we could fund some of the legal fees and negotiation stuff, and it's been almost a year now, and I haven't.
The story I was told on that was something happened with the Maine Attorney General, and now the law had to be, and I might be wrong on how I'm saying this, but it has to now go back to public comment because they didn't file something in time, and the earliest that would be available for distribution for money is January, February. So that might help with legal fees still, but that we don't know when that money is going to be released. And that was, I think, about 20 grand is what they were saying.
Yeah, it wasn't a ton, but
Yeah.
I was every
But I
time I
think-
talked to him, it was 60 days. Just keep your eye out. And
Yeah, and that's per community, so you guys could all work together to,
Now, Sam left. Anthony's still there, the deputy director, right?
Yep.
Are we still having conversations with him? I mean, because he came to 3 of our meetings, and
I CC'd him, Amy and I CC'd him, and we invited him to this meeting. But he's a one-arm wallpaper hang-up right now, probably, because Sam left.
right.
Mr. Chairman, I ask?
Yes, sir.
And this maybe for both, the question for both of you, I mean, do you see the idea of extending the contract for the next year with the idea of maybe having it more to make up the quasi-municipal workings that you did? Do you, either one of you see any huge hiccups besides the idea of not the ability to be able to fund as a quasi? I mean, what's your thoughts? I mean, that's kind of why we're hoping to have a discussion that we have a path forward, that's all, for at least another year, right?
Amy McDonnell. I'm the chief at Lisbon Emergency. So the only hiccup I will say I will personally run into is when I write grants, it's based off of if you're a nonprofit, if you're a municipality. And for those bigger grants that are like millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's something they want to see as like a long-term thing. So those are grants I can't really put in for right now because we might not exist as Lisbon Emergency Incorporated in
Understood.
a
Yep.
year or two. But besides that, I don't see any other hiccups.
The only thing I'll state, this is not just Lisbon Emergency, it's all EMS services in the state. We've been on since, before COVID, but COVID really did it. We've been in emergency operations ever since the beginning of COVID, and it's been nothing but administration work. And for Amy and I, all this year, it's been, some of you know the backstory, it's been nothing but administration. And we've been sneaking operational things in here and there. We've actually made some strides. I think everybody's seen the improvements over the last 6 to 8 months. But we need to work on operations. As long as we're moving forward, I think everybody's going to be happy on our end. But we really need to get this wrapped up so we can work on operations. I think the last month we've all seen we need to work on operations. We have plans. We want to start working with all of our partner services and move forward and make this a better operation for everybody. But we need the time to do that, and we're just buried in administration this year.
Now, this funding is geared toward regionalization, which is pretty much what we're looking at.
Right.
Would it be helpful if we sort of rattle some cages up in Augusta through our representatives, Mr. Timberlake and at least Mr. Timberlake and Mr. Mason, and also the other stakeholders, Bowdoin, if they could draft something, and maybe Bowdenham, if they're in on this, if their fathers could, town fathers and mothers, or I don't want to leave anybody out, but if they could draft something as well and let them know that you guys got to get moving, I mean, we can't do this alone. We need some help getting this money released so we can get this thing moving.
So, from what I understood through our workshops, there was 2 different series of monies, right? So one was the idea of keeping operations going, whether you're paying benefits or whatever. I mean, there was stipulations for that. The other pool of money was for just legal fees, or not legal fees, but actually work for doing the making agreements, the business part of it, so to speak, right? So one was for the business part, and the other one's for their operational parts, actually working with your service to fill the holes that are missing, right? So one's very small, right? The piece that actually is for the operational parts, for the business part of it, I think there wasn't a whole lot of money, right? Like 20,000 or something like that. It all depends on what you were. And the other part, you don't really know what the number is because they don't really have a formula yet for you to calculate it. So I think it's just important that we kind of look at those 2 different, understand what the 2 different pots of money were for, so we can make sure that they're used wisely if we can get them, so.
I'm just talking about getting it released.
Oh, absolutely,
getting
yeah.
it,
Right,
getting it
absolutely,
moving,
yeah.
and having it sit there. I mean, this needs to get moving, and I think we got to push some buttons to get it moving, maybe.
This gentleman right here can speak to that.
Okay, sir,
You have money
come
for
on
us
up.
tonight? No,
Yeah,
no, no.
just write us a check and then we'll be.
I didn't even see that coming. Hi, I'm Rick Petrie. I've been here before with you. So there's $31 million. 25 of it is set aside for transporting ambulance services. It's broken into a 40-60 split, 40% upfront, 60% down the road. The 40% was supposed to, we were supposed to have the guidance on it a month ago. And then 3.5 weeks ago, and then 3 weeks ago, and 2.5 weeks ago, and now we got an email this morning saying sometime in the next couple of weeks it'll come out. John, how many emergency calls last year? So the minimum is 15,000, maximum is 200,000 for transporting services. I think that based on the numbers John just gave me, you'll probably be looking at somewhere around $100,000, $80,000 to $100,000 for that first 40% of the money. But that's a best guess estimate, and I'll be very upfront about that because Maine EMS has been very tight with that, and the director of Maine EMS is no longer the director of Maine EMS.
Right.
He's left, and so we're hoping that this money will come out soon. And the bottom line is that the only criteria is that you responded on emergency calls, you responded on them last year, you'll still respond on them in the future, and that you didn't bring in more than 10% revenue higher than what your costs were, which no ambulance service that responded on 911 calls ever brought in a 10% profit.
Right.
So you'll meet the criteria. John and Amy will have to send in a financial statement that shows just to prove that, and then the money will come their way. So as soon as it hits, if they can get it in within 17 days of when it goes live, then they'll get the money fairly quickly. If they don't get it in that first 17 days, and if you ask me to explain that, I'm not going to be able to, right? But they'll have to wait till the end of the RFA period, which is probably 30 to 60 days, and then the money will be processed. But then the second half of the money is 60%, and so you're looking at the eligibility probably being at least another $150,000 or $200,000, but nobody's defined what that looks like, and we are actually pushing for legislation that removes it from the rulemaking process. That'll go in front of the legislature in January, because Sam Hurley said that if it goes to the rulemaking process, which is what he asked for, it will take upwards of a year for that second pot of money to be available, which is absolutely not what the legislature intended. They set aside $31 million for EMS services to help get their head above water, and to support their staff, recruit, retain, maybe buy some equipment, update some equipment, look at education, things like that. You have to spend the money on EMS related topics, but that's really, it's wide open to that, as long as you can't replace money. If the town of Lisbon gave $300,000 to whoever spent for, in this case, Lisbon Emergency, you can't reduce that amount that you gave them by this money. It has to be used to supplement and not supplant the money. So, and what was your specific question at the end?
I don't know if you had a check. No.
You have to check.
Don't cash it right now.
No, it was just getting the money released. I mean,
yeah, the Blue Ribbon Commission is very unhappy, and it's become evident in a couple of their meetings. But we also haven't been able to bring in the director to answer questions about what the deal is with us, and so they're just frustrated by this. So the next best thing they have is that they keep pushing for that 40% to come out, and now they're going to put in legislation to remove the requirements for rules making process for this for the second 60%. We need to get this into the hands of the services. Absolutely.
yeah, and that's why I think if at the very least we could draft some strongly worded statements to our legislators or to whoever will listen and tell them we got to get this moving.
There's a pot of $200,000 sitting there from May of 21 that was allocated by the legislature for the program. I think we've talked about the community self-determination to give grants to communities to bring somebody in to take them through the process of what is EMS, what do we need, what do we want.
Right.
And that money still has not been released as well through the main EMS office.
Yeah.
Craziness.
So,
Yeah, that's not good.
so hopefully that was helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to ask one question. When you guys were talking about community paramedicine, was that something you wanted to fund through grants, or would that be in like the ramping up of the full-time staff? Sure. And for folks that weren't in on those meetings, how that helps reduce, call volume and what it provides to the community too, as a context.
Yeah, and Rick can correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but we had an opportunity last spring to apply for this, but where we didn't know if it would exist, we weren't able to apply for it, unfortunately. But there is a community paramedicine grant where it'll pay for what's called a community paramedic, and that community paramedic's job is to go out throughout the community, find people that call the 911 frequently or having issues, and help them in their own home. There is plans in the future to come out with funding so that we get paid for that. There's no pay, we don't get paid for it right now. So if we go to your house or your loved one and they look at fall assessments, they look for loose rugs, they look to make sure they're taking their medication. It's a very valuable thing because it helps us from going to their home and at 2 a.m. and picking them up off the floor every time because the community paramedics in there are doing it. It makes sure they are taking their medicine correctly. It's a value add to the community big time, especially for people that can't afford it. We are looking for a grant for that right now. It's not included in our budget. The other thing that could happen in the future is if the state does come out where Medicare, state starts paying for that for runs, as same as a 911 call when we go to your house, that would be different as well, where we could start funding that. That's also part of our response vehicle that we just purchased, in order to be able to provide that service.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think the last item was just public comment for folks that, if you had time or subject matter.
Yeah, we have plenty. I think we have plenty.
I have one. So we extend the contract, which is a good thing, so we can make sure we get this done and done right for all of us, all three towns. The station that you have today would say after the first year extension, you do go 4 full-time. Your sleeping quarters, what's that handled as it is today?
So right now we have 3 bedrooms. We're looking at the option of potentially building 2 more bedrooms, and we're exploring our options as far as whether or not we want to switch our meeting room into 2 bedrooms, if we want to build off our building, which we'd have to talk to code enforcement about. So it all depends on the timeline and what the towns want, really. If the towns want 2 trucks 24/7, we'd have to build the bedrooms.
Now,
to support that.
Would they be like 2 more in the basement, something like that, where it'd be easier to go? No.
No, so our idea right now is to potentially build off the back of our 3rd bay. We have some area there, but we're not sure if it would be up to code.
Yeah.
And if not, then we would just change our meeting room into an extra bedroom, I think.
So you have a plan to expand there during this process of us extending contracts?
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
A lot of talk. I mean, it's good, right? Because we've learned a lot even through the meetings we had. One of the things that came up, and I know we discussed it at times, and I think I just want to make sure that, because Lisbon, actually, we do have that ambulance on order, right, that we are planning to bring in the community as basically a backup for services. Just want to make sure that it's not looked as an offensive move. It's more the idea of us trying to figure out how we actually stabilize just in case we do need a backup and there's no other available. and the idea of not running a fire truck if we don't need to on calls that would work correctly. One thing out of the talks and through our meetings talking, I mean, it would actually be good. How often at this point do you actually work with, say, Lisbon Fire or Lisbon Police or Bowden Fire or Bowdenham to actually just kind of go over services and what can be done to make them better? I mean, I'm just wondering if they're actually, as you mentioned, one of the operational things that you're looking to do is just try to be more in tune with the community and the other services available and try to have backups for backups, right? I'm just wondering if this is a good opportunity to try to put some of that in motion, whether or not, you know, I don't really know how, but actually I think it needs to be done as far as actually to be more talks between Lisbon Emergency, Lisbon Fire, Lisbon Police, Bowden. So, I mean, just the idea of using all the resources we have to make sure that we're trying to take care of our citizens the best we can. And I'm not sure at what level those communications are happening right now, if they are, or if they're meeting quarterly and not quarterly, or if there's any meetings at all. But I guess my point would be is I think at this point moving forward, we need to try to do everything we can, have the best services, and that may be the idea of using every option possible, right? So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not sure if you want to add to that or what you do now for, you know, training with Lisbon Fire or Bowden Fire or may not have an answer, I don't know, but it's just one of those things. If that sounds good that we ought to try to keep working forward on that, I think it would be a good time just to discuss that a little bit.
Absolutely. So we do a quarterly in-house training. For the past 8 months, I've been inviting Lisbon Fire, Lisbon Police, Bowden Fire, Bowdenham Fire, Durham Fire, all the surrounding communities to our trainings.
And how's that turnout? Are they coming?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
Everyone's
to your point,
busy,
that's
so.
something that we should all work on, right? If they're getting invited to something that, you know, to learn and, you know, become team players and understand the training, this and that, you know, what's holding them from showing up? You know, at least sending somebody there, right? And then they can come back and, you know, pass on that information. You know, it's not like they all have to go, but in my opinion, at least someone should be going.
That and just the idea of the working relationship. So, I mean, I can't speak for Bowden and Bowdenham, but you mean when someone calls 911 and, you know, at what level of call does the fire department roll or the emergency goes out? You mean, is there a lot of hand-to-hand coordination with that? You mean, just it's one of those things where we have valuable resources, but we want to make sure they're all there at the right time and they're well coordinated. And I think the last events of the just recent actually shows that definitely the idea of having a good plan and having everybody on the same page is really important. So, again, I just want to add that. I mean, if that's something moving forward that we need to, I think how that gets established, if it's a multi-town, as we work into this quasi-municipal, it's be good to know how everybody works and how everybody has the resources. And, you mean, I'm not sure if Bowden has the opportunity during the day to roll out, you know, any EMTs to the fire department or, I mean, or Bowdenham. I mean, I don't really know how that works, but they really don't have the answers for our own community. So I think the idea of just a stable work plan would be good.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Thank you.
John?
This is kind of what I was saying about the administrative operation thing. Is exactly your point. We need to be working on operations, and we just saw it's all one team. There's no separate teams, and I think we just all saw that. And another reason why we want to regionalize. The stronger everybody is, the stronger we are, and we can't do anything without fire, police, and dispatch, and vice versa. I mean, we all have to work as a team, and that's been our goal from day one.
Now, would you set up the idea of actually redoing the contract so it actually looks more like the quasi-municipal as far as, because it would be a little bit of a change from what it was before, right? Serving 3 communities and how you'd actually have it set up. Is that something you'd just work directly with Glenn? Is that your thoughts, Glenn? Or you?
Yeah, I mean, us in legal can look at the existing contract, and I think we left language in the existing one to extend anyway, so it would just be amending it. I'm right, Steve?
Yeah, that works for me.
And Bowdenham has the same thing. You can extend. Excellent.
Anything else from council? Glenn? All right, I'll open the workshop up to anybody in the public or anybody in the audience who has any comments germane to our conversation. Okay. I think we can just look at our next steps, probably.
Yeah, so obviously we have the placeholder on the regular agenda, so if there's any formal action you all want to take, we can discuss it again at that part of the agenda. So, Steve, I think you're off the hook now, all those billable hours after I
Yeah.
can let you go.
Okay, all right, thank you, Glenn, and everybody. We'll touch bases and see how things move forward, okay?
Thank you.
Oh.
Is there,
Okay, good night.
Night.
these all set. Is there any hard timelines? I mean, I know Bodenstown meeting, when is that coming up?
March.
In March. So basically, I mean, that's,
We just have a number. We need a number before we go to prints, usually by the end of January.
so coming up pretty quick.
What
Yeah.
next year budget number is going to look like.
So we got to set a timeline of at least by the 1st of January to actually have some type of official contract with numbers, right?
Yeah, the one thing that we need from the towns, like ASAP, is staffing levels. Because the fixed costs pretty much are the fixed costs, but the one thing that makes everything go up and down and everything is based upon is staffing. And what level of staffing the towns want. And this is kind of the first year where we've done the budget, we're like, we don't know what to do as far as staffing. So we need input from all 3 towns. Where do you want the staffing levels at? Our first budget meeting is December 21st.
To keep things at status quo right now, but right now you really, if you kept staffing level the way it is right now, but actually just move people from per diem to full-time, that would actually change your budget numbers anyways, right? Even not just keeping the services as is right now.
I mean, we did 3 columns because that was,
Yeah.
3, but whatever was wanted to be done by the towns, there could be some variation of that as well. If you wanted 5, we're at 4 right now. If you want to go to 5, 6, 8, if you wanted some variation of what that is, we can make those numbers up for you and see what those kind of look like.
I think my recommendation would be to bring your best step forward, right, and show us basically, the service communities that you're going to, if it's 3, to actually be able to have proper staff to be able to do so, and what that would look financially. I mean, and then how that divides up. I think that'd be important, the idea of just, instead of having a lot of different options, come up with your best option, what you feel would be the best operational, and then, if it's no one can swallow it, I guess you back up from there, but sometimes the worst thing we have is a lot of options, right? But
I think it would make sense to have some sort of a hybrid, though. I mean, like you mentioned, so we don't have to look at it and say, no, come back with something else. I mean, that kind of seems like a waste of time to me.
Yep.
So I like the idea of coming and saying, here's 3 or 4 different options. Well, I mean, we can let you know where we are when we discuss it.
I think
And you can work on maybe either side of that,
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for us is the hour, how much staffing for 24/7 versus status quo, which is the day truck at 10 hours and 1 24-hour truck. That's what level of staffing, and we're doing transfers as well. Transfers bring in $192,000, but that puts the truck out of town for 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. And that's how we've been supplementing extra staff and reducing our second call loss without going up on things. So I don't, as far as the full-time staffing, absolutely we can give you, but as far as how much coverage you want in your town per day, that's the big number.
those 3 options are pretty much what you laid out already, though, right? I mean, that's.
Full-time we can work around that to lower the cost a bit. It's just, the big thing for us is what you want how many trucks you want in town at any time. You want 2 24/7, 1 extra 10, 1 extra 16. That's going to be the driver for us to base upon what you want.
Okay. And I think that's something that we need.
And then we have to get agreement amongst all 3 communities that have the same staffing level.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take all 3 communities to agree on it. But I think we're heading in that direction already. I think we're all on the same page, and I think we all understand what it's going to take to get what we're talking about and what we want. So
And you need that information soon, is that right?
You know, the second week, first week of December, I mean, it's all Excel, you can punch it in pretty quick. That would be nice. I will say the one thing that Amy and I have both seen, I've been to the Bowden Town meeting for the last 8 years. This past year, they passed us unanimously, which is the first time I've ever seen that. And we've had nothing but great interactions with Bowdenham.
Nice.
So we're very confident this is going to be a team effort.
Good. Excellent.
Is it?
Is anyone from Bowdenham here tonight?
Just curious about the process that we would work as council to be able to look at those, because I think the proposals actually have been kind of put out there. I guess understanding what the difference in the proposals, I guess, would be the bigger factor. Yeah,
Do you mean
but-
operational or the legal structure?
No, the operational, as far as the 3 proposals, as far as for staffing levels, that's kind of what was put out there to us. I'm just curious on how we would actually figure that out. Do we have another workshop where we kind of hit the highs and lows of the 3 different options? Or, I mean, that's, because there's a lot to be discussed there, right, when it comes to the idea of how that affects Lisbon and the other communities.
Yeah, usually it's our budget committee determining that, but realistically, we're at a point now where it needs to be the towns.
So I know we activated the Public Safety Committee last year when we did the RFP. Maybe we break off
Yeah,
for a meeting.
that could be something where we activate the Public Safety Committee and bring it. Like I said, I would like to see some of the stakeholders come in and tell us what, for example, Mike,
Yeah.
Get a little more input from.
And I guess the other component is I don't think we've all sat down in a room and talked about, how the asset we have coming in April factors into this either, and operationally what staff wants to do with that and how we complement the service, or, to just kind of have that conversation again. Because I know John had brought up some options, even for other communities who are looking at upgrading and expanding their licenses, but we will have to figure out how to bill and how to hire a medical director, all stuff I have no idea how to do, and we'll have to talk with staff about that. But you laid out some options, and we got to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, there's really 2 options. One is you guys, the town of Lisbon does it on their own, and they'll have to do a separate of Lisbon Emergency or the new entity, because it's going to be a separate transporting license. It's going to be separate everything, and everything we're doing, you're going to have to do in order to transport.
Yeah.
The other option that we've looked into and we actually got approval on would be Lisbon Fire has their ambulance, the operating ambulance that they have, and they transport under our license. So they fall under our medical director. You don't have to get your own. They fall under our drug contract. They would have to be members of under Maine EMS, they would have to be members of Lisbon Emergency, which is not a big deal. They have to follow our SOP and our training and all that stuff. But they can respond with Lisbon Emergency's ambulance starting day 1, as long as they follow under all that stuff. I originally got it approved under our workman's comp to take care of that. You guys would have to look at your workman's comp, but our workman's comp said, yeah, not a problem to do this. And Lisbon Fire could transport. The ambulance would be licensed to us. The town of Lisbon still own the ambulance. It would be under our license, and we would need to know this for budget season because there's some stuff we would have to pay for. But we would bill it out and so forth. What money we send back to the town, we can send back to the town as a subcontractor. That would be allowed. This happens all the time in construction. This is my background. GC has a boom lift, and he has 3 trades that has to get up there, and you have this one very expensive piece of equipment, such as the ambulance. You need to get the job done. You sublet it to all 3 trades, and all 3 trades fall under the GC, and this would be the same thing. So Lisbon Fire could transport under Lisbon Emergency. They would fall under our license, which would put them allowed to transport up to the paramedic level from day 1. They would have to. Our medical director is going to require Lisbon Fire to go under all our training, all under our SOPs, which you're going to have to create your own and do anyways under your medical director. I did talk to our medical director, and he said if Lisbon Fire did it this way, he would not charge. Lisbon Fire is our medical director currently covers Lisbon Fire, Bowden Fire, and he said he would cover Bowdenham as well. If you separate, he will not do that. You would have to get him, it's not going to be expensive, it's going to be like $500 to $1,000, but you will have to hire him separate. Because he has two separate entities, two separate.
I think just on all of that, I don't want to get too involved in about the ambulance, but when we originally talked about getting an ambulance, I think we was in a different place. The reasons, and where we're heading today, I think we're in a much better place, right? So as far as that ambulance goes, I think, I personally think we should be looking at it where it's going to fit the best, right? And I don't know if it fits the best with us anymore due to the direction that we're going to be heading in, right? I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on it, but I just think that it's going to be more efficient, and the communities, all three communities will get better use out of it. I just think we're not in the place we were.
I think at the end of the day, though, I think our main concern is if we're going to have firefighters responding to EMS calls, we don't want them running on our fire trucks. We want to have something there that actually is capable. Right. So I think it's more of a discussion. I think I would actually refer to the chair to actually come up either with the safety committee to actually just think two things to work out. One is the idea of understanding the level of service we want, because the level of service comes with a different price tag. And then secondly, how that integrates with our service. And you know, how do you do that? I mean, it's probably sounds like a number of workshops, but
yeah, I mean, like, we may not want our fire department doing EMS, right?
But they're going to still respond to calls, so that's the thing.
I understand that, but again, I think we as a group definitely need to
figure that out.
Yeah,
it was intended to be that third call backup if you know both the ambulances are out. We have a fireman rather than take the fire truck out of the fire station, and those things cost $1.5 million. So you don't want to run that when you don't need to.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend that we set the Public Safety Committee and bring in whoever we need to bring into the committee to resolve some of these issues with level of service and use of the ambulance. I would question legal also. I mean, you had talked about under your license and the things that you just discussed about that. Did you talk with legal about that? I don't know if that's something that legal has to say, yeah, that's a good idea, or maybe that's not a good idea. I don't know.
We didn't discuss it with our lawyer per se, but we discussed it with all of our insurance, every single one of our insurance companies and Maine EMS. So Maine EMS and our insurance companies all signed off on that.
I would want to have our legal look at that question, but we could do that through the committee.
Seems like most of our meetings, we leave with more questions than we have answers, right? But that's just the way it works, right? Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers under the thing.
Yep.
Anybody else in the audience have anything to say?
I think it would probably be good if, going forward, if we and the two other towns make sure to work together to coordinate what we're doing, whether it's, if the chairs of the boards maybe keep in touch just so that we're on the same page, so we know what kind of level of service we want going forward, have someone to coordinate that.
Sure. If there's nothing else, we can close the workshop.
Did you want to take a short break before we enter the meeting?
Yes, we needed to shut that off, and we'll take 5 minutes for bathroom break.
I don't think it's going to be long.
Bring it up and then close it.
Yeah,
let's bring it up.
Because we already had that discussion.
Make a
Bring
motion
it
to
up,
have
and then
Glenn
give
work
everyone
forward.
a chance.
I'm sorry.
We don't have to hang around for the whole meeting.
Right. So what are we doing?
I don't know. We're going to keep moving forward, wherever that means.
I don't anticipate any action on the agenda item, so if you guys want to, you can stay if you want to stay, obviously, but if you don't, you can go. It's up to you.
Unless if you have anything that you want to add
Yeah.
on that line item, you're more than welcome to, for sure.
Okay, we are back in session.
So we'll look for a motion to move out of executive session to
Like that.
resume the regular meeting.
I make the motion to come out of executive session.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0. Time is 7:40 PM to resume the meeting.
All right, I'd like to open the meeting by recognizing Councilor Keller for an opening statement.
Thank you, Councilor Moore.
Joji.
I have so much heartfelt respect and appreciation for all the first responders, including our own. They managed a heart-rendingly difficult situation, putting their own lives in jeopardy and keeping us all safe from more tragedy. I will never forget the circumstances and will always honor and respect our own Lisbon heroes. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have a short statement, and the only thing that I think what I want to do, and I think it's important to do, and that is to remember the victims from October 25th. I think the best way to do that is to say their names. So I will say their names. Tricia Aslan, Peyton Brewer Ross, Tommy Conrad, Michael Deslariers II, Brian McFarland, Arthur Strout, Joseph Walker, Joshua Seal, Max Hathaway, Ron Morin, Bill Young, Aaron Young, Stephen Vozella, Lucille Violet, Bob Violet, William Brackett, Jason Adam Walker, and Keith McNair. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, good news and recognition.
Any good news or recognition from the council?
I'm always looking at Ross for that one. Go for it.
I'd just like to take a minute to thank the folks that put together the LHS Craft Fair. Amazing turnout last weekend, and again, they had over 120 vendors. Thousands of people came through the high school auditorium and gymnasium, and that brings substantial business to our town, so I really appreciate that. Also, December 9th? Yes. December 9th, Positive Change Lisbon will be having their Very Merry Main Street celebration downtown in Lisbon Falls, so pay attention to that. And I believe December 2nd is a tree lighting at Graziano Square by the Rec Department. So great things coming up for the holiday season.
Thank you. Nothing else? Next item?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
I
didn't.
Short and quiet.
I didn't see you.
So, Amy McDonald, Chief of Lisbon Emergency. I'd first like to say thank you to everyone for coming to the workshop and meeting tonight and exploring all the options we have drafted up. We understand how precious everyone's time is, and throughout this process so far, we have had great conversations and participation from the towns and interested parties. The officers at Lisbon Emergency are hopeful for equally beneficial, long-lasting relationship between the towns and us that can be something other communities might strive for in the future. For years, Lisbon Emergency has worked within the town of Lisbon and also provides and works closely with the town of Bowdoin. Over the last 6 months, we have been providing coverage to Bowdenham when our partner Northeast is not able to. We have been accepted by the town of Bowdenham with open arms and have also had many productive conversations with them. I think the main reason everyone is here tonight is because we all care about our communities. Lisbon Emergency has been striving for the highest quality of care, and we will always continue to do so, no matter the circumstances. We are excited about the opportunity to progress forward, and we look forward to working with you all. I wanted to capitalize on this opportunity to speak, and since it's been a while, I'd like to give a very quick update on how we're doing as a service. As of right now, we're still on a hiring freeze with applications and interest coming in weekly. We hired our 3 full-timers, and we were able to hire within the organization, and it's been huge to have these shifts guaranteed at the medic level. We had our audit, and no issues were found with that. Our service and providers went above and beyond last month during the incident on October 25th. Everyone really stepped up, and we were able to staff 3 trucks for the night of and the days following. Northeast provided us 2 medic trucks to cover our station in towns while we had 3 trucks in Lewiston. The community has really wrapped their arms around us and all the other first responders, and it has meant more than words could express. Lastly, Lisbon Emergency was able to secure grant funds to outfit a first response vehicle. This vehicle will be a huge asset to us in the communities we serve. It will have the normal medical supplies and also 8 ballistic vests, 20 stop the bleed kits, an MCI kit, and other various equipment that we will be able to utilize daily. Thank you everyone for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item are public hearings. First public hearing is a renewal of the itinerant vendor and victualler licenses for Mac Daddy's Mobile Cuisine food truck.
I'll open that public hearing. No comment. I'll close that public hearing.
Next is the hearing for a renewal of the liquor license and special entertainment permit for the Slovak Catholic Association.
I'll open that public hearing. Any comment on the Slovak Club? Seeing none, I'll close that hearing. Next item.
Audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may approach the lectern. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record. This portion of the agenda is solely to address items that are on today's agenda.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to the agenda? There being none. Next item.
Next item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a councilor requests an item be removed. Any councilor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none. Order 2023-198 to approve municipal accounts payable warrants, $753,769.89. Municipal payroll warrants, $213,516.25. School accounts payable, $505,186.05. School payroll warrant, $832,444.52. The itinerant vendor and victualler license renewals for Mac Daddy's Mobile Cuisine food truck. Liquor license and special entertainment permit for the Slovak Catholic Association. To set public hearings for December 5 for the renewal of automobile graveyard permits. And to set public hearings for December 5th for the renewal of liquor and special entertainment licenses for Coombs Mount Fort.
I make the motion that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed. Vote 7-0. I see here, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I see here that I neglected to give the names for the 2 automobile graveyard permits. They were completed as of today. One was for Mr. Campbell, and one was for Mr. Houston.
Okay. Thank you. The record is clear now.
Thank you.
Next item.
Order 2023-200, emergency appropriation for the sewer department.
Mr. Sewer Department. Steve.
Sorry, I'm waiting for my memo to pop up so I can read from it. But the long and short of it, and Steve's here to speak to it, this is procedural. So during the budget workshops, there were revenues that we accounted for, but were not specifically in the expense budget and appropriated to service the debt on the USDA loan. So that revenue lapsed into fund balance. So we need to pay the payment on the loan. All the documents are attached in the agenda packet. Council will need to authorize us to use the undesignated fund balance to make that loan payment so we do not default on our USDA loan.
Correct. And we did discuss this at our budget meeting back in March. Through the change in finance directors, the ball got dropped on having this within the budget, so it would already be accounted for. And as Glenn mentioned, we are just looking to get approval to use the funds out of non-committed fund balance, along with funds from our budget or revenue.
How much funds we talking about?
That would be a loan payment of $370,923.
Are you looking for a motion?
And we're using, sorry. So the difference in undesignated funds is $152,527.39. That's what you're authorizing.
152.
So the motion would be to authorize an emergency appropriation affecting property for a transfer of $218,350.61 from Sewer Department anticipated revenues and $152,572.30 from unappropriated funds within the Sewer Department account to fund the required annual debt service payment to the USDA.
I'll make that motion.
Second for discussion.
What's our total undesignated fund balance now?
Do you know that off the top of your head?
Currently in the neighborhood of about 2.1 million, mostly because we started increasing rates in 2017 in anticipation of being able to make the payment for this loan, and due to the Main Street project being several years behind getting started, the revenues were still coming in, even though we weren't paying that debt service until this first payment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
And maybe it's just for understanding. So the sewer department basically has its own budget, right?
Yes.
So the undesignated fund we're talking about is the town's undesignated fund. We only have one, right? Or it's actually the sewer department has its own undesignated fund? Or
Yes, it does.
It does. So the undesignated funds we're talking about coming out of is the sewer department's undesignated funds?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So it actually has a pretty healthy reserve?
Yes, it does, and we are working on getting that spent down, because currently it is not helping us when it comes to getting some of the grants that are out there, because we have so much in that fund.
I just wanted to make sound clear, because we have a lot of seems like we have a lot of different funds, so it almost sounds like we're given approval to take it out of the town's undesignated funds, but it is its own entity, its own budget, its
Yes,
own
correct.
funding. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Ready for a vote?
We ready for a vote? All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Pretty important to pay our bills.
Yeah. Oh, I did have a question about that. I think
Too
it
late.
said.
Already voted on.
Too late. Send a memo.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I mean, it's important that you express your views.
I think one of the memos in that document that came from the USDA said, let us know by the 13th of the month so we don't end up with late fees. But I'm wondering what happened with that, because it's way past the 13th of the month.
Unfortunately, I'm not the person that would be able to speak to that. That would have to come from the finance director.
Okay. I just happened to read that, and I said, oh, wait a minute here.
So it sounds like we got
Possible.
penalized a little bit. Possible.
Can you investigate that? And
Yeah,
find
I'll
out
follow up
whether
with
we got-
Samantha. I have a feeling that if we were going to incur some late fees, I would have
You would have
known about that, because she communicates very well and would have given me a heads up on that. So
She handles stuff like that really well, too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item.
Next item is Order 2023-201, the disposal of 7 Farnsworth Street.
Sorry, the agenda software is acting up a little bit, so I have the memo here. The finance director sent the town council and myself a memo on September 12th. So per our town code regarding foreclosed properties, this is requesting disposal of 7 Farnsworth Street. We did some research with the town attorney and the tax collector, which is provided in the memo in the packet. So there is no record at the registry that the USDA has an ownership stake in the property. This was a foreclosure at a USDA loan property. So the tax collector is able to make contact with USDA. And then there was a note in the system effective April 22 that they would no longer make tax and sewer payments on behalf of the property. So we're asking the council for permission to move forward with disposal of the property in accordance with the new LD 101 law that was passed in May.
I have a motion, or just any discussion?
Make a motion for discussion.
Second.
So what is the process now to do that? I mean, we can't,
So I haven't had to research it since the law was passed, but we were waiting on something from the Secretary of State's office or the AG's office on how the state wanted us to proceed with the disposal of foreclosed properties. I will reach out to legal counsel if the council authorizes me to dispose of it, and I will find out how we do that moving forward. I know we have to sell it at market rate. We can recoup what we've put into it, but any remaining balance at fair market value would go to the previous owner, is my understanding of the new statute.
do we know who the owner is? Do we have connection or no? I mean,
It is in the memo packet, the previous known owner. I don't know if it benefits us to say her name.
No, I was just curious. I mean, I'm just curious whether or not it would go to the financial lien holder or the actual owner. I mean, the person that's been paying the...
So because there was a mortgage held by USDA, I think it was they could have foreclosed on the property, and they did not. So they chose not to, and now it's ours to dispose of.
See, I kind of took it that they were the really legal owners, that the money would go back to them if there was excess. But I mean,
yeah, and typically in a tax lien situation, the town supersedes the bank, but I don't know if that changes with a USDA loan or not.
It's interesting. I guess it's going to be an interesting trial run, right, to figure out how this works. So.
Yeah, it'll definitely cost us more money to do because we'll have to hire a broker and have the attorney, and
but
we'll
we
recoup
can
that
we can
with the
recoup
sale
any costs,
as long
right?
as it sells at market value. Yeah.
Assuming it gets sold for market value.
Right.
Interesting.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Order 2023-202 to ratify the November 7th election results. On November 7th, 2023, Lisbon voters cast their ballots in a regular election. A total of 2,460 ballots were cast, and all ballots were counted on Election Day by our warden, Rick Roberts, Deputy Warden Debbie Hill, and our Election Day clerks for the final tally. There are 7,163 registered voters in Lisbon, 2,460, which is approximately 34%, cast ballots. Of those ballots cast, 867, which is about 35%, were absentee, and 1,591, which is about 65%, were in person. So these numbers tell us that fully a third of our voters chose to vote absentee or early, and it helps show us how vital early and absentee voting is to our process. For our municipal ballot, voters approved an amendment to the town charter to change the school committee elections from November to June in order to align with the school budget referendum. An ordinance authorizing the funding for the Borough Road Bridge was also approved. Lisbon voters chose Fern LaRochelle for another 3-year council term, Leonard Lednam for a 2-year school committee term, and Alan Ward for a 3-year water commission term. There was no declared candidate or declared write-in candidate for the 3-year school committee seat that was open. So we're actually discussing our next step with the town attorney in light of the recent charter change in order to assure that we proceed correctly for that, for filling that seat. And I've already been in touch with the school committee chair. So finally, I'd like to thank everyone who helped with the election, both in preparation and on election day, from wardens and election clerks to my coworkers and management in the town office for their hard work and dedication. Maine elections are the best in the nation, and that's thanks to all of them.
Thank you. Next item.
Can we vote on it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Motion they ratify the November 7th election results.
Second that.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Make sure it got ratified, right?
Or not, I guess, whatever works. Right?
Next item is other business. The first is Friends of Warumbo annual update.
Do we need to excuse her to do this, or is she just good to get out of it? What's the rules for that?
She can do it either. There's not really a rule for it. It's just what council would prefer.
That's fine. I didn't know.
Not a rule for that.
don't want
Good.
to leave.
Unless you need to vote on something.
Nope.
All right. Good evening. I'm Christy Kane, the director of the Friends of Warumbo, a committee of positive change Lisbon. I'm here tonight to update you on the first year of the Friends of Warumbo. Last year, after seeing the positive financial impact the Blues Festival had on surrounding businesses, the council decided to pursue the creation of a community event space on the site of the former Warumbo Mill. In January of this year, the Friends of Warumbo signed a memorandum of agreement with the town to develop and operate this community event space. This arrangement of management by a not-for-profit was established so that the development and running of the site would have no negative financial impact on the town or its taxpayers. In fact, because we've taken over the cost of grounds maintenance for the site, we're actually saving town resources to be exploited elsewhere. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Fern's Body Shop and Lisbon Cannabis for underwriting the Summers grounds upkeep of the space. Once the memorandum of agreement was in place, a committee of interested town residents was formed and we began to plan the future of the site. Our mission is to create and manage a community gathering space and premier event venue in the heart of Maine that will provide a culturally enriched environment along the Androscoggin River. Motivated by our core values of connection, community growth, and the preservation of our scenic natural resources, we will create and maintain a treasure for our community, local businesses, and the great state of Maine to enjoy. We began by naming the site the Warumbo Riverfront Event Center, or REC for short. This fall, through a grant awarded to the town last year, the grass was seeded, and an assortment of 10 red and sugar maples were planted around the perimeter. We intend to further develop the site through the addition of some permanent infrastructure, such as perimeter fencing, restrooms, and a pavilion that could be rented for events such as wedding receptions or graduation parties. This year we hosted several successful events at the REC, including the Maine Blues Festival, Smokey's Greater Show's Carnival during the Moxie Festival, the Gold Stars Tribute Wall, Surf in the Falls Surf Music Festival, and the 9/11 Never Forget Tribute Ride. Most recently, it was the site of a candlelight vigil that brought hundreds of community members together to begin the healing processes after the shootings in Lewiston. Looking ahead, we plan to work on applying for grants this winter to help begin the infrastructure development, and we have several events booked for next year, including the return of the Blues Festival, the Moxie Festival, and the Surf Music Festival, and the addition of a reggae music festival. If anyone in the community wishes to reach us, you can find us through our Friends of Warumbo Facebook page or email us at friendsofwarumbo@gmail.com. Thank you for your time. Does the council have any questions for me?
Reggae, huh?
Reggae.
Sounds good.
Yeah, August 3rd.
August 3rd. So mark my calendar, because I'm a reggae guy, so.
Excellent. All right. Seeing none.
But I think that it's, so far, it's been great. It's been really good, I think. It's brought a lot of people in, a lot of people using it, and that's kind of what we were looking for, so
Yeah.
good job.
Thank you. It's a process, but I think you'll see strides every year and good things to come. It's a good community space.
And financially, it's working.
Financially, it's working.
Very good. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item is the Lisbon Emergency Medical Services discussion.
Do you want a motion so you can move forward with your committee or for Glenn, or do you think we have it?
Yeah, I mean, we can make a,
I think we should.
Yeah, because nothing we do in workshop actually is binding, right? So, I mean, if we actually...
yeah, we need a vote to,
So to recap from the workshop, I would be asking council to authorize staff to be able to amend and extend the contract, activate the Public Safety Committee to talk about level of service and integration, and to continue the discussions surrounding regionalization over the next year.
I make that motion as...
What he said?
What he said.
Hang on.
He said,
And I'll
George, you
second
gotta
it.
go.
To discuss.
Yeah, so authorizing me and legal to extend the contract, activate the Public Safety Committee to discuss level of service and integration, and to work with legal over the next year to keep the regionalization negotiations going.
And that includes also working with Bowdoin and Bowdoin.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I know we'll do the order first, but we can discuss it. I know you had mentioned reaching out to Bowdoin and Bowdenham directly, and
Right.
potentially, as we get farther down this road, maybe even having to retain another separate legal counsel so they can, talk about our mutual interests as the three communities. But that could be another discussion.
Is it wise to set a goal date to this motion, or?
I mean, I think we should keep meeting monthly like we have been, and
Yeah.
just keep the
I just
ball moving.
I just remember that Lisbon Emergency said it's important to level of staffing be determined relatively early in their budget season.
So we were shooting for December 1st for the level of service. That's what I have in my notes, right? First week of December.
Which is coming up
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
So that will mean that we should convene the Public Safety Committee
Tomorrow.
yesterday.
Later
He gave us till the second week too, right?
Yesterday.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's meet the first
Yeah.
week of December.
All right, sounds good.
I was hoping for January 1st, but December 1st actually is pretty quick. So I made a motion. Anybody second it?
I did.
Don
did?
second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
Next item.
Is the treasurer's report.
So this is just a quarterly statutory report you receive. If there's any discussion, I would not be as qualified as Samantha to answer those questions, but I can always bring back answers if you have them.
Any questions about the treasurer's report as far as we know? Is it just next item, or do we vote on?
It's just for discussion, and it's just a quarterly report.
Next item?
The next item is the town manager's report.
So I got a couple items. First, in your agenda packets, I have disseminated the completed public safety building packet from Port City Architects. Following this meeting, I'll upload that to the website so the public can access it as well. They can also access it via the agenda packet. Also is a list of recommendations that I won't go through the whole thing because it was a pretty lengthy memo. But the actions that I'll be asking for out of those recommendations tonight is if the council could authorize the use of the special reserve account for blighted properties, up to $10,000 to due diligence for land acquisition related to the sites identified in the report. And then I will come to you at a later meeting with a more fleshed out resolution if that is something we want to explore. The other thing I would ask is to activate the Public Safety Committee to discuss next steps for the public safety building outlined in those recommendations, and reaching out to maybe community members and subject matter experts. So in addition to staff and elected officials, we have a public safety building committee, and we can keep this conversation going.
Are you looking for a motion for anything?
Any questions on it? But other than that, those are the only asks of council I have as far as authorizing me to begin the due diligence process for site evaluation and to pull together that public safety building committee.
Needs to be a motion. I'll make a motion as described, if you want to vote on it.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor?
It's using funds, so it's always better to have a vote on it, right?
Using money.
Next item?
Order passed, vote 7-0. I'll get the wording for that from you
Yep.
later.
So, sorry, agenda management software crashed, so I got to go back and go into the next thing. So just bear with me for a second. So the next one is just an update about some of the ongoing issues at Public Works with water intrusion and mold in the director's office. I asked the assistant town manager to include in the packet a timeline of events, but basically around April 2023, Randy notified us that there were issues with mold and water intrusion. We had an air quality management company come in and do some testing in September, indicated there was a presence of mold. In the short term, Randy and the foreman have relocated their office, one to the upstairs break room, and Randy has now moved over to Town Hall temporarily. We've solicited quotes for remediation and repair and the next steps to be taken to prevent further damage. Currently, we've got a dehumidifier running in the office. We had ServPro come out. It's about $5,600 to remediate the current mold. But as we're getting ready to go into budget season, this brings up a larger discussion. We've got an aging building there that was built by the Army Corps in the 1960s. I know the town many years ago looked at replacement of that building, and it's been 20 years since that failed referendum question. So now is the time to start having that conversation about long-range planning as we get ready for budget. But in the short term, we're going to remediate the mold. We've relocated staff. The cement block wall is damaged. It has a roof deformity. We've had masons come out. They've quoted the work, but they are not available to perform the repairs. And then also, if we repair the roof before the wall, we can't do that. That's my understanding, because it'll damage it further. So temporary roof patching stuff is necessary. So especially because winter's coming. So we're going to ask Randy to look at quotes to consider the cost for a temporary site to relocate the offices outside the main facility, and should those not suit the on-site needs, keep looking at quotes for masonry work. And as we gear up for budget, this is probably going to be a conversation we have in March. And then long-term, and again, as we go through budget, we'll figure this part of it out, but bringing in a structural engineer to determine the longevity of the existing structure's useful life so we can plan for the future. But that's the long and short of it in the short term. If you have any questions, Randy's also here to answer them if you have them.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Long history of that building, right? So, I mean, in my tenure, we actually put a lot of money in the building after it burnt. We actually redid a lot of the building. We actually had a structural engineer look at it then to make sure it was structurally sound before the addition was put on. And we did a lot of work to it, but still, I mean, it's still a very challenging place for offices. We had actually taken the offices down from upstairs because the air quality was poor from all the engines running in fumes and everything. It was found to be a not adequate place to have any upstairs offices. That's why they were closed at one point in time. They moved downstairs. Then that didn't work out, so they actually came to the town office. So, I mean, it's been kind of like this revolving door that's been happening with this. I mean, I think it'd be good just to actually have a general overlook of the whole operations of what is best suited at the time. I mean, it was actually kind of thought that the best operations for the management team for the public works would be in the town office, but I'm not sure if that's true or right. I mean, everything changes, especially on a staffing and how it works out. I would make a recommendation to the chair, or whoever the chair is at the time when we do it, if it remains the same as we move into the next year. I mean, I would love the town council to actually do another tour of the town and actually check out the facilities and actually I'd love to walk through the public works, and I do a lot better when I see stuff versus the idea of I can understand it. I'm not sure if the rest of the council agrees, but I'd like to actually go through all our town assets, and I think it's a good yearly tradition just to see what we got and what needs to be improved. And
yeah, it sounds fun. I know Rec used to provide the bus, and the public was invited too because you have everybody attending, so we can get on the bus and do a tour of all the town facilities.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's just it's nice to put things have changed, right? So
I just want to bring to your attention also, if we do any type of improvements that actually goes above a certain percentage on the building's value, the rest of the building has to be brought up to code, which is going to get quite expensive because the building now is not up to code. So just keep that in mind if we want to do these improvements and repairs, and it comes to a certain percentage of the value of the building. Now the rest of the building is going to be brought up to code. So I don't know what the council's position is on fixing up a 60, 70-year-old building. So let's keep something in mind.
I can tell you the history of us going to vote and have it not pass means that we probably have to do something with it.
Well, exactly.
Just to be facts. But
They voted it down twice, right?
yeah. Only reason we got it improved last time and put an addition on is because there was a fire, and we used the money from the proceeds of the fire
Yep.
to actually put into the building, so,
But the addition was actually supposed to be used as a wash bay.
yeah.
Right.
Now it's my mechanic's bay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, things have changed. Like I said, things change every day. Not
Exactly.
saying that we shouldn't look at every option, but I think the idea of just, trying to figure out what all our options are is really important, and the idea of looking at that building, and
Right.
there's no question about it. I mean, we had alternatives in the past, it just never worked out financially, but.
so like Glenn was saying, we can't fix the roof, which is the problem, which is the reason why everything leaks. And until we fix the wall, well, the wall can't get done because there's really nobody available till probably spring or summer of next year. So basically, it's still going to be in the same condition, leaking water, until we can actually get the wall fixed, and then we can put the new roof on. And then whether or not you want to rebuild the offices there, which I don't think it's a great place for an office. Tell you the truth, I've been in there. It's really not that good of a place. Because
It's a garage.
it's a garage. That's right.
Has there any possibility that insurance could look at this to let us know if the
That's
insurance can
Glenn's getting involved.
cover?
Yeah, we haven't reached out formally to the property and casualty carrier yet, but it was the next step in the process to see if any of it would be covered. But at the same time, we brought them out for the old salt shed, and they want us to tear that down because it's uninsurable. So
Careful what you ask for, is that what
Yeah.
you're telling me?
Yeah, because I'm actually using that old salt shed for storage for stuff that doesn't fit in my garage. So I've got my chipper, my hot box, and the roller, and all that stuff in that cold storage there. I've got my street sweepers up in the other building at the transfer station, taking up the bay. So I've got stuff everywhere because I don't have enough room.
Maybe we'll put our salt in there and use the new salt shed as a garage, right?
Who's
I'd revert back to that if you want. But
No, I'm just teasing.
counterproductive.
Be happy.
whose value of the building do we use? If we're going to base that on a percentage, what
I don't know what the
valuation
assessed
is it?
value is on that property. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what the building's
I'd have to
assessed
talk to
value is.
code enforcement and how that works. I'm not sure how they calculate it.
So do we intend on check with the insurance?
Yeah. I can.
I mean, the value's a lot less with a leaky roof and a bad wall, right? So, until those improvements get done, I don't think the thing's going to be worth top money. So I don't know how it goes.
Okay. Thanks.
But we
You
do
know,
have a nice generator
If it
down
doesn't
there.
appraise well and it doesn't, have a good value, then it really, when we put all these monies into, a new office or whatever, it really brings down that ratio of your percentage that you're going to have to do the rest of the building. And then at that point, you're still improving on a 70-year-old building, which the blocks are deteriorating. So
Well, we've got to take those steps to see where we are then.
Yeah.
I think you guys should all come over and take a look, and I'll show you exactly what we're talking about, because the salt and the slush melt goes onto the walls, and all the blocks on the, not all, but a lot of the blocks on the bottom of the wall of the building are deteriorated. So they're just coming apart.
So,
Anyway.
It's age.
yeah,
Age,
that's the update. We're
Nice.
working on what next steps are.
Corrosion.
Yeah.
You gotta
Thank
take it apart. Collapse is worse.
Thank you,
So
sir.
I just have one last item. Requesting council authorize me to authorize the town manager to institute an action against Ken Moang at 8 Lisbon Road for land use violations in the name of the town of Lisbon in Maine District Court. So this is a notice of violation was sent to the property owner. We had set to meet with him last Friday. He didn't show up for that meeting. He also had a consent agreement that he was due to bring the property into compliance by November 13th and execute that agreement and pay the fines. He has not executed the agreement. He has not paid the fines, and the property is still in violation. So I am asking the council to authorize me to do an 80K, work with the attorney to do land use enforcement action.
I'll make the motion to allow you to actually take action.
I'll second.
For discussion, can you prosecute those in court?
I was going to make a joke. I'm not a solicitor, so I can't. But yeah, they go to the
Well,
district
I
court.
mean, civilly you can. Can you?
I'm not familiar with the process. It's relatively new to me how they're done in the state of Maine, but basically what happens is a property is found in violation. A conversation happens with code enforcement and us to bring the property into compliance, because obviously enforcement is the last resort. Then usually an owner will take action. If they don't, we reach out for a consent agreement to resolve it, civilly. And then if that goes, doesn't work out, this is the next step to take them to district court. So we're working on that right now with another property on Ridge Road, and they bring the person in. There's an arraignment. They set a trial, and they'll assess damages and fines, and that's the next step.
Go ahead.
Well, my question is, can you prosecute that?
I don't have.
Can you go in behalf of the town in court to?
So usually it's the code enforcement officer and the town attorney. I don't personally go to district court.
Okay. Just wondering.
Yeah.
Is the question I was going to ask, the legal fees, can that actually put it onto the lien?
Yeah, we recoup those. That's all part of most
be.
consent agreements. We recoup the legal fees as part of the consent agreement plus
Yeah.
fines.
Yeah.
So
it would just be put on lien and just gathered over time.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a way of actually getting our money back regardless.
Correct.
All in favor?
Order passed, vote 7-0.
And that does it for town manager's report.
Next item.
These are a little
Next item
off
is
again,
council
but
committee reports. What?
these are a little off again,
Yeah,
but
they are.
and we'll work through it. Yeah.
I say we go with go with this and see what happens.
Yeah.
School committee,
I have nothing to report.
planning board,
No meeting last month. Next meeting, 12/14, is scheduled.
Lisbon Development Committee,
I think we already heard about that in the executive session.
Conservation Commission. I attended the Conservation Commission meeting on the 14th at Beaver Park. The biggest item that we discussed was the fact that a surveyor is going to come into Beaver Park and go around the perimeter and just mark the perimeter of the park so the forestry people can come in and start beginning their I'm not going to say clear cutting, but selective cutting of the forest inside of Beaver Park. Parks and Rec.
The last meeting was pretty interesting. Been talking about the idea of properly securing the MTM building. Even prior to the events that happened last month, they actually had a schedule to have the Department of Homeland Security come in and actually do a review of the MTM, walk through it, check the safety of it and exits and entrances and how it's being used right now. And I guess that went really, really well. I guess they got some really good input. They actually, through that and through the people of town, the chief, McGee, actually came up with an action plan of what they needed to do. And it was actually pretty good. It was, I think, put out pretty straightforward. It was non-negotiable. This is what needs to happen while the kids are here. Building needs to be locked down. And then they have a long-term plan that they're going to work through. So I guess it's really kind of neat that they had an opportunity for someone like Homeland Security to come up and give them a good assessment of the building and what needs to be done. And I think long-term wise, I think there's a lot of entities in the building now that will probably need to actually relocate so we can use that building for what it's really intended. And I think it's programs only need to grow. They're going to need all the room they can. And with all the stuff happening in the world, we want it to be as safe as we can. So, and that was a highlight of the meeting.
I'll add too that they put in for an $80,000 grant to beef up some of that security. Not sure where we're at in the process, but if that's awarded too, that'll help.
I think it's been awarded, and that night they hadn't got a phone call yet. So.
Oh, okay. So we're waiting. Okay.
So it didn't seem like it was going to happen, but I mean, I think it's smart to have Homeland Security come through, because once you do that, when you do grants, now you can actually put, this has been checked by Homeland Security, and these are the recommendations, instead of just throwing out recommendations, actually have some substance behind them. So the more information you have, I think the the better chances I'll have getting grants moving forward. If that makes sense.
Thank you. County Budget Committee.
I have nothing to report.
No, I know. I attended the commissioners meeting last Wednesday. At 4:45, I went in. I was there until after 8. And I mean, if you read the Sun Journal, you know what I've been doing down there. But I made our position clear regarding this extra patrolman for Turner. I thought going into this meeting that it was going to be pulled from the budget, but it turns out there were a number of people there in favor of keeping it. I made my position clear that that's not going to solve the problem that exists on Route 4, and that, in my opinion, the only thing that's going to fix it is to have a barrier on that road to keep cars from going over and hitting other cars. There was some pushback from some people that didn't think that would work. I don't get that. I heard comments like, if we save one life, it's worth spending all the money. To me, that's more of a virtue signaling kind of thing than reality, because it's just not reality. They're going to continue to have fatals there if they don't do something. I understand, and it was made clear that the county can't do that on its own. It's not their property to do. Route 4 belongs to the state. So my recommendation was to shake the halls of the State House and get mad and get some people involved to try to get this thing fixed. Ultimately, there was some sidebar discussions, and the money for the position was pulled from money for the Route 4 building for the new sheriff's department. That was money that had been appropriated and was sitting in a fund for what, I don't know, but whatever it was, they decided to pull that money out and fund the officer with that. So I was assured that it wasn't going to be an increase in our cost this year.
This year, 1 year.
We know that's going to happen.
I read that
because
article.
it's going to be a perpetual.
Yeah.
You read the article?
I read the article, but it wasn't all that clear at the end. But
Well, that's again, I got assurances from the commission that wasn't going to be a budget increase for the outlying towns. There was also a letter from when I sent my letter to them. Livermore Falls also did, which I didn't know about until the other night. So the bottom line is they're going to fund another officer, and I guess we'll just see what happens. But I really believe they need to stop messing around with this and get some way to get a barrier in there. I did a lot of research on the accidents from the late 80s up until 2022, and gave them some numbers on cars that are crossing that center line and hitting other cars head on, which is really tragic because a lot of times the car that you hit, who is just driving down the road, die. The drivers or the passengers die. So it's not the person driving that dies. It's the innocent person coming the other way. Mm-hmm. So somewhere, obviously, there were cars running off the road and hitting things, and but so it was frustrating, but it is what it is. Library Governing Board.
The library certainly saw an impact from October 25th in both having to cancel programs and also turning into a community house aspect more, with people coming in and wanting to talk about what was going on. So definite impact. Still business as usual They are looking forward to the egress being solved, which has a marginal impact on what we've been talking about, which the library does not have enough exits for the building. So they're redoing one that we used to have on the second floor. Is there an update on when that's going to happen?
I have to check in with Bill. I think the masonry work has begun, or it's about to start soon, and then
I think so. Yeah.
But I will check in with the contractor and Bill to see where the project's at.
Okay.
I know that we have started the requisition, like the purchasing process, so they're ready to go whenever the contractor's ready to start. But so I just got to see what the scheduling looks like and when they're going to start that up.
Because I know the library has rearranged things so they, that the area is clear so they can do the work.
And as a reminder, that was with the ARPA funding that you were doing that project with.
And the Friends of the Library is active. So that's a new, we used to have a Friends of the Library, and they went inactive for a while, and we now have a group back that just did Thanksgiving dinner baskets, sold chances on that, and made, a good amount of money for the Friends and for the library.
Good. So just as an update, they started pulling the permits on the 13th, and they've been posted in the library, so they're ready to go.
Knocking stuff down, right?
Yep.
And the door must be coming out towards the fire station on the other side of the parking area, pretty
Yep.
much.
And it'll be ADA accessible as well.
Good, thank you. Water Commission?
As most of you know, they're on a calendar year budget, and they're finalizing the budget for next year, which is just about almost $2 million. There will be a rate increase of 1.5% on the water coming, I believe, in January. This is a different approach that the Water Department is using. The PUC still has to go to the PUC, but by keeping it down to a very small rate of increase, it doesn't require all the hearings and things like that. But the PUC does have to pass on it, so that's going to be happening.
Thank you. Finance Commission? Nothing. Committee? Nothing. Next item?
Appointments, we don't have any. So next is council communications.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I had communications with Roger Bickford a week or so ago, and he is a little frustrated, and his group is frustrated about the fact that the railroad corridor is going to take so long to get reused as an ATV trail or anything else. So he advised me, and I think he also called Fern, and wants somebody to authorize the ATV clubs to come down into town, and he thinks he wants to approach the council in the spring to do that. So come into the town so they can, quote, go to the restaurants and things like that.
Yeah, he wants to go down through Main Street, open up Main Street. I think it's a great idea. I think Main Street would be perfect for him. I mean,
but he said the group would approach in March or something.
Yeah. I mean, they open up Route 9, has been, no issues there. Wayne Street, no issues there. I think Main Street will be much safer, right? And give them, you know what I mean? Instead of shooting up Wayne and then Route 9, then down 196, you go straight across Main Street. I think it'd be much, much safer for.
Well, if we could stay off of 196, it'd be helpful.
We have them on the roads. It's working. So I think Roger's idea for Main Street's a good idea.
Yes. I just I had the pleasure of going to the J. Plum Home Store opening, which I believe several people did the night before for businesses. Did you go?
I did.
And fantastic. Very, very welcoming, very easy to talk to, a fun store. I really enjoyed visiting.
Anybody else? Next item?
Audience participation and response to new items.
Next item?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0, 8:35 p.m.
The audience is out of control.
Glenn, have yourself a good holiday weekend.
Yeah, have a good Thanksgiving.
Everybody. Grandma will be excited. I haven't seen her since July, so.
Store warming gift.
It's always
And I
nice
carried
to
baby Alice around while I
Starting to get a
shopped.
little.
And I saw
And we all?
Kelsey's message, and she was carrying
find
baby
myself.
Yep.
Alice.